Okay, hello and welcome to Hearing Marginalized Voices Through Poetry, celebrating Indigenous American heritage, or as I like to refer to it, modern day oral history. And we'll get into that more in a moment. I would first like to thank the IDEA Committee at Miramar College for sponsoring and hosting this event. So much love and much appreciation to the IDEA Committee and Miramar College for allowing us to have this event. So without further ado, we will get started. Uh, First, we would like to recognize that San Diego Miramar College sits on the ancestral homeland of the Kumeyaay people who have lived in this area for well over 10,000 years. You could probably add a zero to that at least. And we honor the past, present, and future stewardship of this land by the Kumeyaay, yeah, sorry, I apologize, peoples, and we acknowledge that our occupation of unceded Kumeyaay land and the systematic injustices this has perpetuated for Native peoples of this region. We pay respect to the Indigenous peoples of San Diego County, past, present, and future, and their continuing presence in their homeland and throughout their historical diaspora. So, without further ado, we are going to get into our event tonight. And we're going to start out with discussing a few things because poetry, spoken word poetry, storytelling, it's all an extension of oral history, which is very important because written history is often not very accurate, especially when it is, as they say, written by the winners, quote unquote. So let's look at a couple of very important academic historical discrepancies. Uh, we do not know the true history of this country, not by being what we're being taught in schools. And here are just some examples. Here, the first is an actual excerpt from a K through 12, I believe it is an elementary school textbook. And it says, and I quote, when the European settlers arrived, they needed land to live on. The First Nation peoples agreed to move to different areas to make room for the new settlements. That is not how it happened at all, as we will continue to discuss. The second example is from Bill Bigelow. It is from his book Rethinking Columbus Towards a True People's History. For years, I opened my 11th grade U.S. history classes by asking students, what's the name of that guy they say discovered America? A few students might object to the word discover, but they have all knew the fellow I was talking about. Christopher Columbus, several called out in unison. Right. So, who did we find when we came here? Who did he find when he came here? I asked. Usually, a few students would say Indians, and I asked them to be specific. Which nationality? What are their names? Silence. In more than 30 years of teaching U.S. history and guest teaching in others' classes, I've never had a single student say Dianos. So I asked them to think about that fact. How do we explain that? We all know the name of the man who came here from Europe, but none of us knows the name of the people who were here first. And there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them. Why haven't you heard of them? This ignorance is an artifact of historical silencing, rendering invisible the lives and stories of entire peoples. So, since we just recently had a holiday that celebrates the unison of the settlers and the natives who were here, let us take a look at the true origin of Thanksgiving. This is a link if you would like to go to on your own. There is a lot to read here and very educational, so I recommend you all do so. But here is a brief video that I wanted to share with you all.
Before there was Plymouth Colony, there was Patuxent, a coastal village of Wampanoag people populated mostly in the warmest season. Our people lived inland during the winter, and in the spring, or New Year, when the earth woke up and new life came to plants and animals, the birds and the trees, they moved to the coast. The Patuxent men cast their machine into the harbor and fished. The women planted and tended their gardens, and the children played on the beach. Then, when the cold wind blew the dry leaves back to the earth, the people of Patuxent would move inland where the winter wasn't so harsh. These people laughed and sang and danced to the beat of the drum wherever they went. One can imagine it was a happy life until the summer of 1614. That was the year Captain John Smith commanded a fleet of ships touring the New England coastal region. Among that fleet was a ship with a captain called Thomas Hunt. Upon his departure to return to England, Captain Smith instructed Captain Hunt to embark on one more landing and go to Patuxent and trade with the natives there. Captain Hunt was to get some fish and beaver pelts in exchange for things like blankets, knives, and metal pots. These things were quite a novelty to the people of Patuxent, so they sent a party of young men with furs to visit Hunt's ship that was anchored in the harbor. But instead of trading, the 20 men who boarded Hunt's ship were tricked. They were tackled and beaten and restrained below deck, captured to be sold as slaves. None but one was ever known to return home. His name was Tisquantum. He came to be known as Squanto. Everyone seems to know his story, but not so much about how Squanto came to be the English-speaking Wampanoag who helped Plymouth Pilgrims survive. Today, many Wampanoag people still survive. 5 bands of Wampanoag are recognized by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, including the Assonet, Chappaquiddick, Herring Pond, Pocasset, and Seekonk people. 2 Wampanoag tribes are federally acknowledged sovereign nations, including the Oquinta Wampanoag on the island of Martha's Vineyard, numbering more than 1,000, and my people, nearly 2,000 Master Wampanoag based on Cape Cod. All the people engaged in the design and development of this exhibit, researching and writing, posing for images, and performing in video are Wampanoag. This is our story.
So, one thing that I wanted to point out, you may have noticed, uh, the issues are not only the large ones, as in the feast was celebrating that they had taken the land, that they had taken these slaves. That was what the feast was actually about. But it's also things like names. We heard him say his name was actually Tisquantum, but in the history books, he's called Squanto. It's just like when we hear of Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea, that her name was actually Sange Wea, which is Lakota for cane woman or wood woman. But in our history books, she's called by a different name. So it's significant in not only the facts, but names are important. Names are powerful. And so, with the way that they continue, the way that history changes these subtle things, it leads to not just genocide, but erasure, so that there's no way to know what even happened. So, we'll continue with our presentation. So, one of the things, it's continuing to happen. See, in our oral histories and our oral traditions, we've known for hundreds of years the actual origin. And similarly, there are news reports coming out these days about things like evidence found, Viking evidence found. So we have 2 articles here about one in southern Canada, where they found evidence that the Vikings had come, settled, and then left, traded with the local tribes and such. And we can also see that Another report here shows that in Wisconsin, they recently found a 1,200-year-old canoe that is said to be a historical design from the Vikings. So not only were the events incorrect, they weren't even the ones to quote unquote discover America. Vikings were here far before. And again, this is something in our old traditions we have known. We have known all along. We have told the stories of Eric the Red coming and trading with natives. But this is a new discovery. Um, as we continue with the new discoveries, you may have heard recently in the last few years about the native children burials that have been quote unquote discovered. That children who were beaten and killed by boarding schools when they were being Americanized and Christianized. This is a new discovery. It's in the news. Again, it's been in oral tradition for many, many centuries. We've known about this. And actually, we may hear more about it later. The Every Child Matters movement was, I believe, our guest this evening had something to do with that. I don't recall exactly. Maybe she will share that with us. Um, but I just wanted to establish before we got into the poetry why we're doing this, why poetry is part of hearing marginalized voices, and why specifically for indigenous populations it's so important to continue those oral traditions. Because look at if we did not have them, it would be erased. So let's take a look at establishing an honest and truthful historical timeline for one of the most epic genocides in written history. America was not discovered, it was invaded and taken by force. Indigenous Americans were tortured, killed, raped, and enslaved. After numerous treaties, quote unquote, Indigenous Americans were forcibly removed from their homelands and left to fend for themselves in some of the most remote and desolate areas available. Children were taken, their hair, sacred to Native peoples, forcibly chopped off. They were beaten, often to death, for using Native languages and customs. As if all that wasn't enough, killing buffalo, essential for the existence of the indigenous plains people, became the primary sport for the colonizers, hunting them senselessly and almost to extinction. You see this picture alongside here. That is a mountain of thousands of buffalo skulls. And that was the primary existence for so not only were they put in remote areas, but their source of sustenance was removed. And people often say, well, that's ancient history. Like, we need to move forward. Native women were sterilized against their will and knowledge while using Indian health services offered from the US government as recently as the 1970s. So let's take a look. In the last 500 years, as song stories and languages were erased, the indigenous populations were decreased from 100% of the population before the colonizers showed up to currently 2%. Native Americans currently make up 2% of the population of this country, and their histories were whitewashed and all but forgotten. So poetry became the natural progression for these oral traditions to continue. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our guest for the evening, but I would also like to share with you a little introduction. So if you will allow me to indulge, I will get things started. Wounded Knee Massacred. Prayer ties, sage and sweetgrass, littered with beer bottles, cigarette butts, and shell casings, marking the land with the Venn diagram of the colonizers. But we will be unmarked no more. Try to disguise lies. Histories deny oral traditions. Native children now rise again to remind us past crimes are still here. Remains revealed built upon these buried truths. Don't let them forget. Little ones call out. Try to keep our past buried. Spirits still shall rise. Little ones cry out, try to keep our past buried. Our ghosts still shall dance. Since 1492, when that killer Columbus sailed the ocean blue, people have been running for their lives. From boot heels, running from guns and knives. Well, maybe if they'd had the respect of Eric the Red, three-quarters of our people wouldn't have been left for dead. Labeling this a new world is nothing but tragic. For 100,000 years, the people have danced in its magic, and finally, we start exposing some false and oppressive ways, and they think that they can shut us up with Indigenous Peoples Day? Well, maybe if they had the respect of Eric the Red, three-quarters of our people wouldn't be drinking themselves dead. You cloud our awareness with alcohol and pills so that you can offer a mountain of scrap paper for the Black Hills. Can a closed mind ever be able to understand land doesn't belong to people? People belong to land. So, without further ado, to further take us on our journey, I would like to introduce our special guest for the evening. Kyla Tucaya Garcia is a Taino poet, director, actor, and activist based on unceded Tongva land. She believes stories are medicine and fuses her voice, art, and activism to make the ancestors proud. When she's not behind or in front of the camera, you can find Kyla volunteering with rescued wolves or performing on stage at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe. To connect with Kyla, visit www.kylagarcia.com. So, without any further ado, please give a warm, warm welcome to Kyla Garcia. Oh, you're muted, Kyla. You're muted.
Thank you, Bear, for that beautiful introduction and for that beautiful performance and the knowledge you shared about our history. Thank you for starting us off with such grace and groundedness. Hello, everybody. Usa kasakaba daluku. Hello, my people, new friends, fellow poets, bright, bright students, and hope for the future. My name is Kyla Tucaya Garcia, and my people are the Taino nation of Borinquen. When Bear was speaking earlier about how most students can't name the tribe that Cristobal Colon, aka Christopher Columbus, as I like to fondly refer to the genocidal maniac, when he was referencing how students don't often know the name of the tribe that first encountered him, that's my tribe, the Taino. We are still here. We are still thriving. And it is a privilege to be holding space with you tonight, connecting for this brief moment. We are all alive on the majestic blue planet. Sometimes I look at the people I love and I say, I'm so lucky to be alive at the same time as you. Even some of my favorite artists, your magical Professor Bear, poets that I love, artists that I love, Jesse Reyes, Paul Hewson, Jennifer Gavon, Joy Harjo, to name a few people who inspire me. I mean, we all could have missed each other by a century, yet here we are, alive, sharing space in this Zoom universe. I am zooming to you live from the ancestral homelands of the Tongva people. As Bear was saying earlier, it is necessary, it is absolutely vital for us to acknowledge the original caretakers of the land we are guests on. Native Heritage Month and Indigenous Peoples Day are every day and month of the year. To live on native land is to know deep in your bones that we live on stolen land, built by the labors of stolen people from their homelands. This is why Black liberation and Indigenous sovereignty are inherently intertwined. Knowing the truth of our country's past is the key to healing and building our future, right? As individual people, we can't heal and grow stronger unless we reckon with our own individual pasts, and countries are the same. So, the Hopi Nation, they have a proverb that says, those who tell the stories rule the world. I think for too long, The colonizer has been telling the stories, and now we are hearing the voices of the survivors and the voices of the oppressed communities who were silenced for so long starting to ring out, even in our film and television. I mean, this is a pretty crazy fact, but it's true. Over 90% of every piece of media that we have ever consumed, film, television, theater, has been written, directed, starring, or produced by white men, which means each and every one of us have grown up seeing ourselves through the eyes of white men. And as someone who comes from a multiracial heritage, not ever being brown enough for my white side or white enough for my brown side, to realize that I grew up looking at myself through that perspective, it's been very enlightening to go, what does it feel like to see myself through my eyes? And what does it feel like to see yourself through your eyes? How do we deprogram and decolonize our stories? The Cheyenne also have a proverb that says, "A nation is not conquered until the hearts of its women are on the ground." Poetry is the way I lift my heart from the ground. Poetry is the way I navigate this wonderful, grief-filled adventure called life. Poetry has given me my voice back after many years of being an actress and giving voice to other people's stories. Poetry is my home. And stories, right? What the Hopi Nation said about those who tell the stories rule the world. I also believe those who tell the stories can heal the world. So to tell your own story is healing for you as an individual, right? And if we all are rising up telling our stories, it just makes me think of what a healed and beautiful world we could actually live in if we were all doing our tiny little individual part, weaving our own thread in the tapestry of the world house we live in, right? Dr. King talks about the world house. So anything that's going on in the world, Iran, what's happening with the women fighting there, everything, Ukraine, this is our world house. That's our backyard. So the more we liberate ourselves as individuals, the more we will liberate this world, because we're all part of it. We're all part of this world house. And the world house is our home, and poetry is my home. And today I am inviting you into my home and my heart. As we connect in the next hour or so, I want you to take notes, not on what I'm saying, but on thoughts and feelings that arise in you during our time together. Those inklings may be seeds for something you want to write, something that's been yearning to be voiced, a part of your story. So after this time, I want you to listen deeply and follow those inklings. Heck, if you use the entire time we are together to write a poem, that will be time well spent. We are living in a world yearning for each of its inhabitants to live their dreams and rise up, to find and honor your truth. If everyone on this planet could find and honor their truth, war and poverty would be obsolete, right? Happy people don't start wars. People living their truth don't start wars. You can't even start a fight with your friend if you're in a good place and you're in your highest consciousness, right? You're like, wait, let me take accountability for that. So I want to listen to your voice, your true voice, not the mask you wear or the edited posts you create. That's your voice too, of course, but I want you to be listening to the true voice, the sometimes ugly voice, the shadow voice, the I made it out alive voice, the hope I need every morning when I wake up voice. You were born with an inner voice and compass that has the answer to every question you could ever dream to ask. I wrote a line that I say to myself daily like a mantra. Love yourself and you'll put the whole world out of business. No Black Friday, Cyber Monday, giving to others Tuesday. You can give to others in your own spirit every single day of the year. I want you to turn that voice up loud. And all the others, let's unplug from them for a while. Just for this time together and beyond. What are the words you are longing to speak? What is the dream you are longing to build? I'm going to share some of my pieces today pieces I create to navigate my path as a human, a woman, a descendant of multiracial identity, where I pull from the cosmology of my ancestors and the map of the stars as a guidebook. Pieces where I try to greet my shadows, my rage, my deepest joy and pain with equal attention, where I hold the most shameful parts of me with light and kindness. Hahom is the word for thank you in Taino. Hahom in advance for your time, for sharing your precious life minutes with me, right? That's the only thing we don't get back is time. So thank you for giving me some of yours today. Hahom for your time, your ears, your heart. Hahom for listening. This first poem is called Dak Toka Taino. How do I tell you that to trace my lineage like a scar on my rib cage makes me want to run to the caves where my people were born? Dak Toka Taino. I am my ancestor's daughter, though my feet have not yet touched her earth. I visit her in dreams, the island of my foremothers, the enchanted island of my spirit who will never be tamed. Dak Toka Taino. If I don't wash my face in the morning, the dreams stick to my skin, and I taste the carambola falling off the trees. In waking life, I can't seem to find my way home. Searching for it makes me tired. Sangre Blanca crashes on Taino shores in my hybrid heart. A war fought across a battlefield of two arms. Battlefield turned embrace when we remember the circle. Dak Toka Taino. I am the bridge you meet when peace is finally made. Perhaps that's why it's easier for me to walk on stolen land than on my own. I was born carrying white flags of surrender. In strange lands, I feel bold. I dare them to touch me. Dak Toka Taino, my beloved Puerto Rico, you fragrant, lush, misunderstood coqui. I hear your song, but cannot hum the tune. Caribbean waters are rushing inside my womb. How can I finally return when all I want to birth is rebellion to save her? Dak Toka Taino, remember the name of my people, the way October won't let us forget the name of the invader. La Isla del Encanto. She arrived on the back of a turtle. He flipped her on her back before he poisoned Turtle Island. Dak Toka Taino, they didn't know our people gave her wings. Caguama, mother of our story, who birthed Borinquen. Dak Toka Taino, the only truth that we know. I am my ancestor's daughter, though my feet have not yet touched holy ground on El Yunque. I've lived all this time dreaming on land only for the sea to awaken me. Dak Toka Taino, when I walk the land of my people, I will hold our strength again. Become one with mis sueños, en la isla de mis abuelos, la isla en mi alma that can never be claimed. Dak Toka Taino, when I speak the name of my people, I'm not tired anymore. This next piece is called Coqui Heart. And for those of you who don't know, the coqui are the frogs that form the soundtrack of Puerto Rico. Some believe that they were responsible for helping us to hide, to survive, to thrive in the mountains when the colonizers came. They are very, very powerful beings, the coqui. Coqui Heart. I became a poet to resuscitate my heart. I've been walking around dead for a while, caught between the astral and the waking, convincing everyone I'm really here with a smile. But truthfully, I died so long ago. Feel like Amy Winehouse in that video when she buries her heart. These past few years have been a living funeral ever since mine closed. 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 I locked myself out. No one's got the key, not even me. You can't be a phoenix and bypass the burn. You can't be a phoenix and bypass the burn. You can't be a phoenix and bypass the burn. But I wanted to turn back time. My biggest mistake was wanting to keep you after you broke me. I wanted to have my lesson and eat it too. I wanted the one who witnessed the struggle and caused the fall to be beside me as I found my power again. But you were just a boy. I wanted you. I wanted us. I wanted the me who was with you to rise. I did not want to be something new. Someone new without you. If I became someone new without you, it means I lost you. Dead heart, closed heart, hopeful heart, she's opening. Dead heart, closed heart, hopeful heart, she's choking. Even in my dreams, you're still a liar. I try to forgive you in waking life, but those dreams reignite the fire. No truth in either realm, a long overdue apology. I wrote myself a letter in your handwriting once. It said everything I knew you wanted to say, but didn't have the courage or language for. It was everything I dreamt of hearing, and it sustained me for a bit. But every once in a while, I remember you didn't write it. And these dreams, these haunting split heart seams remind me to hold on when all I want to do is let go, let go, let go, let go, let go. I want to be something new. I am ready to be someone new. I am ready to be me without you. You're going to miss the best part. I'll hold my own hand this time. I'll find the heart that hasn't yet been born. Infinite heart, unstoppable heart, leaping heart, she's waking. Infinite heart, unstoppable heart, leaping heart, she's taking the leap back into life. Leaping heart is always awake, she's got no time to sleep. Leaping heart is alive and her main focus is peace. Leaping heart is free, she sculpted a new key to open that door. Leaping heart is me, she's wiser and lighter than ever before. Leap heart, leap. Leap heart, leap. Leap heart, leap. You're gonna miss the best part. So, just from those first two poems, poetry has been a key for me to navigate my spirit, to navigate my bloodline, to navigate my heartbreak. It's really medicine. And whether you consider yourself a poet or not, we all have the ability to generate this inner medicine. So I hope you're taking those notes. If you have just a thought, a fleeting thought, a poem will catch you like that, you know? You'll hear a line, just one line. I had a poem, a very dark poem, grappling with our country and what we're all going through right now and what we all have to rise up against, right? We can't have one leader of the movement. We have to be a hydra. Because when there's one leader of a movement, like Dr. King or Mandela, when there's one leader, they think, let's take the one leader down, and then they lose their hope. But if it's a hydra, a new head grows, right? So if we're all leaders, if we're all rising up in the way that we need to, that's how light overcomes the shadow. And so I had this one line, I was like, America is a carousel built on top of a graveyard. What's that? America is a carousel built on top of a graveyard, right? Because I was thinking the indigenous land, the indigenous graves, everything our country's built on the slave labor of the Black community, of the ancestors, and a carousel that just keeps going around and around and around. And it's a great ride for some people, you know. Some people are on the pony, some people are on the little spinning part. They're having fun, but others are underneath the carousel. And so the poems will come to me in a way like just one little line, and rather than dismiss it and go, I don't know what that means, I go, I don't know when I'm going to use that, but let me write down, America is a carousel built on top of a graveyard. And when the poem comes to you, it's best to, I feel like Mary Oliver talked about this, that it catches you by your foot when you're running through a field, and you better stop everything and grab a pen and write it down, or it's going to go to someone else, you know, the muse. I feel like only in our modern day do people say, oh, that person's a genius. Way back when, it was more accurately described as, you have genius, you have the muses working through you. Nobody is a genius, but the muses, the inspiration, spirit, creator, whatever you call it, we all have that. And when it moves through you, you're just the vessel for it. And so whatever lines you're hearing, or if there's notes, just words that are coming out right now, write those down and pay attention to them. Even if you come back to them, you know, a day later, try to make it sooner. But if it's like, oh, a week later, I feel like the America is a carousel line. I was like, I don't know what to do with you, but I'm going to put you in my notes on my iPhone and we'll come back to you. And I did. Because the poem wants to be written. Those words want to be spoken from you. They want to be shared, even if you don't share them with anyone yet. They want to be spoken. So give them a place to live and then nurture them. Let's see. I'm just feeling what okay, let's jump in here. One of our incredible peers, her name is Amanda Ashley Villanueva, also Taino, fellow Boricua, part of the New Yorican Poets Cafe, teaches a workshop. And I've written poems in her workshop that have just been so good for my soul. So I'm so grateful to her. And I chose a lot of them to share with you today. A lot of them have been written there. So this one is called Soft Armor. With simple ease, I carry every part of you. When you bruise your knee, I show folks you're black and blue. I hold bone like a basket, with each organ cradled within. I'm the most flexible part of your being. I hold everything in. Without me, you'd be a puddle, blood clotting on the floor. I want nothing from you, but for you to hold others the way I hold you more. Just a little ode to skin. It's just keeping us all together at all times. This is a poem in honor of my heavy uterus. The first time she left her cherries in my underwear, I cried. I cried in the bathroom as my sister taught me how to use a tampon from the other side of the wall. Heavy life giver, weighted soul maker, sacred technology fueling my entire being. She's been holding her breath since my 13th birthday, reminding me like moonwork, tick, tock, tick, tock, tick. Another egg flushed down the toilet. Another child you will never hold. In the bathroom of my childhood, I cried at the changing of the seasons. I mourned my freedom. This transition from carefree girl, unstoppable athlete, tumbling through the universe, running faster than all the boys, a dozen backflips for the sole purpose of movement, into the heaviness of womanhood. You will be seen differently. Parts of your body will swell. Parts that make you a magnet to truckers who catcall you on Friday mornings, whose voices will disappear when you are of age, which will have much more to do with them than you. Becoming a woman is brakes at the intersection. 100 miles per hour, then stop. The instinct to protect the little girl morphs into the expectation for you to mother the world. Responsibility arrives with blood. There is no male equivalent. There are tribes who recognize how pivotal this moment is. Tribes who host festivals where the girl in the village next in line for her moon will run for days. And the community will run behind her. and feed her, hold her like skin, to remind her she is not alone. I wish the whole world held women with such care. I have another one that's a bit fun. It's a rap about John Smith being a fuckboy. And so it is a poem, but it's also a rap. And I'm going to pull that one up for you. Also, fun fact, did you know that up until 1978, it was illegal for Indigenous peoples to practice their spirituality? So even speaking these words of my language, believing in what I believe in with my community was illegal. 1978. My parents were 18 in 1978. So when Indigenous people come together and tell stories and speak their language, right? I had a dear friend, this is a line in one of my poems that I might read, but a dear friend tell me that the ancestors are proud of you if you speak one word of your language a day, just one. To speak our language, to tell our stories, to practice our spirituality, that is resistance. Resistance can look like love, can look like connecting with your people. It doesn't always have to be forceful resistance. It could be me going, I'm sharing these words with you that in 1978 it may have been illegal for me to share. Just a side note, a very important side note if you look that up, the Indian Religious Freedom Act. Let me find John Smith was a fuckboy for all of you, because it's just fun. Let's just call him out, everybody. Let's call out John Smith, okay? Yo, John Smith was a fuckboy. I'll tell you why it's true. He gained all his notoriety by talking shit about Indigenous youth. That's right, I said talking shit. Because that tale about him and Pocahontas was tall. He claimed her daddy tried to kill him, and she heroically took the fall. When, according to modern-day historians, the chief was performing a ceremony to welcome him into the tribe. And no one had to fight to keep his lion ass alive. And did you know Smith told similar stories about at least 2 other foreign girls he met, claiming they saved his life too? More bullshit, I bet. What a brilliant tactic to paint women as martyrs, normalize it from the get, so that over 400 years after his story, female martyrdom is something men don't appreciate but expect. And this man has gone down in history as one of our greatest explorers, when he was really just traversing already occupied land and forest, spinning lies about women, talking about love at first sight. Smith is proof that men exploiting women for their own fame is a timeless, ageless plight. Don't even get me started on not being paid equal. I wonder if they cover the credit she got for her part in the founding of this country in the Pocahontas sequel. Her real name was Matoaka. And tell me, how did Disney have the nerve to make a film about the love between a full-grown man and a native beauty queen? In the movie, she looks a lot older than she seems, singing about colors of the wind and all these unfulfilled dreams. But in real life, do you know how old she was? Between the ages of 9 and 11. Not even a teen. So before Matoaka was falsely portrayed as a young princess with a crush on a white man that was just starting to unfurl, she was really a missing, invisible, Indigenous girl. Like the millions of Native women today who are exploited and removed from this world in all kinds of horrific ways. Protect our water. Protect our women. That's what the relatives at Standing Rock say. Because when Indigenous land is stolen, Native girls are always the first to pay. See, Fuckboy Smith helped shape the American patriarchy this way, so that women in this country today still don't really got a say. It's okay for them to risk their lives for men or be first lady and shit. But for a woman to be president in this country, president, not vice, nah, Americans still ain't cool with it. But enough about that fuckboy. Let me tell you about that brave young girl who's credited with saving a man when she really saved the world. Our world, the new world, the one we inherited but really stole from the Pamunkey tribe. Brave girl, smart girl, her spirit full of fire and light. Did you know she gave the colonists the very first seeds of the tobacco flower, laying the foundation of our economy that would lead to America becoming the world's greatest capitalistic fuckboy of power? Her good nature and negotiation tools led to peaceful correspondence between the natives and them intruder fools. They stepped all up on her family's land, and when winter came, they were screwed. No furs to keep them warm, half-made shelters, no food. But baby girl convinced her people to bring them meat, corn, and pelts so their stupid asses wouldn't freeze. How come we never celebrate that? Instead, Disney focused on her falling in love with Mel Gibson, voicing this dopey-ass sleaze. See, when native stories are told through only one skewed perspective, Americans claim it as truth, but I'm here to change the directive. Please don't insult this young spirit warrior by celebrating her for the myth of saving one fuckboy of a man. Give this queen her due. Remember her legacy every time you set foot on American land. Because the way she navigated peaceful relations and sacrificed everything she knew is the reason we live free in a country that preaches red, white, and blue. In reality, the seeds of this land were planted by the red. And even though we are now a country of many colors, let's acknowledge who was here first. I'll remind you, in case y'all forget. I think them founders of America had a plan from day one. Glorify a woman if she gives up everything for a man, especially if she has a son. Pocahontas Matoaka did become a mother to a sweet baby boy. But before she did that, she helped give birth to the America we all love and enjoy. So next time you hear people use her name as a racial slur or as some damsel in distress Disney fairy tale, drop the knowledge you just learned. Spread that shit without fail. Because the only way we heal the past is to reframe the present narrative. That's your first lesson in Herstory 101. We'll call it the Matoaka Declarative. I mean, the first seeds of the tobacco flower? We're never taught this. We're never taught this. A country that is completely consumed with corporate capitalism and treating people as just a means to an end for labor, right? And we're never taught that this woman, speaking of labor, she was a part of birthing it all. And also, something that everyone should know, and I try to teach and share this message as much as possible. If you want to learn more about how you can help Indigenous women, go to the www.niwrc.org, the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. You can learn how to help them. Heck, you can donate today, any day, not just days that America deems days to give. Because Native women have the highest rates of sexual assault, domestic violence, and murder in our entire country. And that's all because, again, 1978, the same year that the Indian Religious Freedom Act was passed, we had a big, big loss that year. The Supreme Court favored a non-native defendant named Oliphant. If you look up the Oliphant case, that took away criminal jurisdiction for Indigenous people, which means that if a non-native person goes onto tribal land and commits any crime, murder, rape, kidnapping, they are completely immune to being prosecuted. So, because of that loophole in the criminal jurisdiction and our failing criminal justice system, it's a broken system, but it is working for the people who built it. But because of that, when pipelines are built, it's not just a hypothesis that, oh, some awful things may happen to our women and children. No, protect our water, protect our women is because thousands of non-native men move in to these things called man camps right next to where the pipelines are being built on tribal lands. And when those man camps are there, horrific things happen to Native women and children. And so if you want to learn more, go to the niwrc.org, be an ally, listen, donate, learn as much as you can. And don't tell everybody what I told you, right? We try not to tell. It's very sensitive information that's what the criminal jurisdiction is like there, right? But to fellow allies, educate, continue to educate, continue to spread that word, because that's how we keep us safe. That's how Native women will be protected. We have to protect ourselves, and we need allies to know this to help protect us, because it is horrific. And you can learn more at the Red Dress Project too. There's so many different ways you can learn and support. Okay, how's everybody feeling? How's everyone doing? I have a few more. Oliphant, thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Bear, for including all of those. Yeah, it's unbelievable, right, Jennifer? It's unfathomable. You hear it and you're like, how can that be possible? I've gotten into spirited discussions with lawyer friends who are like, that can't be possible. I'm like, it's possible. It's written into law. The law is not perfect. It's just a bunch of words that we use to justify things, right? So, yeah. I hope they repeal and overturn the Oliphant case. Let's see. Let me find, because we're talking about Native women, I have a piece called Buffalo Sisters that I really want to share with you. Buffalo Sisters. Bear was talking about the buffalo and how the murder, the genocide of the buffalo, the absolute eradication of them was a tool of genocide. And so when I think of buffalo, I think about the women, and I think about the Cheyenne proverb of the women's hearts on the ground, right? If you can take away the sustenance of a people, you can kill a people. If you can hurt the women, this war against Native women, the more they attack them and hurt them and try to control them. I mean, it was legal. It was legal to do those things in Georgia. It was legal in Georgia, Cherokee land, when the Cherokee land was stolen, right before the Trail of Tears, right before the Treaty of New Echota was signed. It was legal to assault Native women in order to get their land, to kill the husbands, to hurt the women. This was legal. So when we think of law, we have to reshape it. And there's also a really incredible playwright that everyone should know about, Mary Catherine Nagel. She's a Cherokee playwright. And when she's not reframing the narrative of Native people on stage, she's also a full-time lawyer and partner at Pipestem Law, fighting for the families of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and Two Spirits. And she was also fighting for Standing Rock. She's incredible. Look up Mary Catherine Nagel and learn about her work. And I'm going to find Buffalo Sisters for you guys. MMIW is the name of MMIW G2S, if you want to research the crisis and how you can help. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, Two-Spirit Movement. Thank you for your patience. I had all of them ready, and then Buffalo Sisters is hiding. It's hiding because that's how we survive as women. Sometimes we have to hide, get strong, build up our armor. So I have this one for you, and then one other one if we have time. Buffalo Sisters. Trigger warning for the missing and murdered Indigenous women's crisis. He wanted to float the river. I was searching for peace in the flow. Brought up MMIW An exit ramp was where he wished he could roll. Avoiding the emotion, too much guilt to hold, he said, "Why do you always focus on sadness? Can't you trust the beauty of life's glow?" But I can't stop thinking of Sarah and all the pretty places she'll never go. Can't stop thinking about Selena not afraid and how her family will never know. I can't stop thinking about 14-year-old Henny and, of course, 21-year-old Hannah. I can't stop thinking of all the missing and murdered women ignored by law enforcement in Montana. Yes, I'm currently traveling in a state that is number 5 in the nation for swallowing up our women and destroying generations. The Salish, Blackfeet, Cheyenne, and Crow. With so many lost daughters, how do they bask in the beauty of life's glow? So I tried to float the Clark Fork River and take in the beauty of stolen land. I tried to let the currents move me, following nature's divine plan, but I kept on contemplating how in a majestic place like this I feel so other. Kept on fixating on how countless women who look like me are taken from their mothers. I married an angel ally, but he finds it hard to digest all this blue. He thinks he's making me feel better when he says, "That's not your story. It won't happen to you." Growing up by the Hudson on Lenape soil, hell, I thought so too. And let me tell you, it's easy to see why. When I'm in Jersey or New Eureka, folks don't look twice when I walk by. But here among the mountains of the wild, wild west, I feel a target on my back and an anvil on my chest. I hear the ghosts of buffalo, the first casualty of power's grip. I channel their hooves and strength. In moments, my heart starts to slip. In times of trouble, the buffalo instinctively stand together. They move forward side by side in the most brutal forms of weather. When they travel this way, they're unstoppably strong, never walking alone. The herd moves as one. In the middle of electric firebolts, ominous clouds, and fatal storms, the buffalo forge straight ahead. That is how they transform. I was trying to find a correlation between the buffalo and our women, trying to make it all make sense when I fell in the river and was forced to swim. Moving against the tide, it almost swallowed me up and took me under. But I thought of Yemeya, whose guidance says surrender. Surrender to your fears, let them be cleansed through your pores. Surrender to your resilience, a white flag for internal wars. Surrender to these sacred, medicinal, healing waters. Alchemize ancestral grief into the rebirth of our daughters. I listened to her words and somehow found my way. I drifted toward the rocks and let them still me as I strayed. Today I could have just floated and stayed silent for a man's peace. But my voice moved like the river. It was rooted by the trees. I found a way to climb out and stand in a herd with the female ancestors in my blood. Buffalo hearts, I rise for them. Together we fly high above the flood. See, us women of all colors, we've got to move like lightning. We've got to rise together even when fear is striking. We've got to make our pens our swords, raise our voices like their wings, keep on fighting for our sisters, keep on talking about uncomfortable things. I won't be silent for men. Won't let your discomfort end me before I start. My poetry is a stampede for all the mujeres in my heart. And I have one more. And I was thinking too, as we've been together here, and as you're taking your notes and planting your seeds for your own stories and your own poetry, I was thinking about how important intersectionality is in all movements, specifically with the Taino women, with Puerto Rican women, right? Boricuas. An example is how feminism, more than many other movements, feminism requires intersectionality because for some feminists, the invention of birth control was a huge win, right? But for Boricua women, birth control was tested on them without their permission. And a lot of women in Puerto Rico had la operación, and that was the sterilization of our women without their permission, right? Which we're seeing that today. That story with the whistleblower of the women that were in the ICE detention centers and that operation was happening to them, being sterilized without their consent, not knowing what was happening to their bodies. And so, yeah, I always look at birth control as a great example of how much we need to have intersectionality in all movements, because sometimes when you're involved in resistance, you want to celebrate certain wins, but you really have to know the history of it, right? And I only just learned that. That wasn't in my history books. That was nowhere. For Boricuas, for Tainos, they give us a Puerto Rican Day parade in the city, right? They give us J-Lo. They give us these exceptions to the oppression. And so it's like, oh, be quiet, be happy with with what you have. But if we knew the real history, I mean, if I knew all of that growing up as a kid, man, now that I know it, I'm like, how can I use poetry to alchemize and liberate and do what the young lords were doing? My goodness, we don't even learn about the young lords and what they were doing with the Black Panthers to liberate oppressed communities and feed children, just get children food in schools. I mean, there's that Malcolm X quote, right? If you're not careful, they'll have you loving the people doing the oppressing and hating the people being oppressed. Totally paraphrased. But yes, learning your true history, there are ways to be grateful, right? I'm so grateful for being born on Turtle Island. I'm so grateful to be a citizen of our country, right? To have been born here, especially when we look at what the women are fighting right now in Iran. I can't stop thinking about Masi and just all these women. So we contain multitudes as people, as poets. We contain multitudes. I can have this rage and I can have the things I want to change. And I can also have this deep gratitude every day. But it's like love, right? Like when you're in a relationship with somebody, you want to become the best version of yourself and you want them to as well. I think that's a Baldwin quote too. He talks about, when we really love someone, we have the ability to say, hey, I know how I can be better. Let's be better together. We got to do that with countries too. They're not perfect. Democracy isn't perfect. It's fragile, has not been around for very long. We have to fight for it. We have to fight for all things good in this world. And that brings me to my last poem. Forgetting is the antidote. Yeah, because we have to remember our history, right? But then we have to have selective forgetting to survive and to thrive. We can't be holding this all the time. We can know it, but Indigenous people are fun as hell too. Like, we are really fun. We know our history. We will school you. We know what we deserve. Reparations for Black people, for Indigenous people, for everyone, right? We know about it. But also, we're fun as hell. So I want to celebrate that too. This is why selective forgetting is good, to go, we can still have fun. Our joy is just as much joy in the Indigenous community, in the Black community, in the Asian community, in all marginalized communities, right? The LGBTQ community. Like, joy has to be our fuel. It can't all be rage. It can be underneath, but there's got to be joy too. We have to be living our lives, right? It's making me think of Club Q. Joy. Joy is the antidote too. So this is Forgetting is the Antidote, and it's a poem that gets me through when it's really hard to forget the things that hurt me and that are hurting the world. Forgetting is the antidote. I'm keeping all the good and forgetting all the rest. They say forgive and never forget, but all this remembering's got me depressed. A tiny voice inside my heart whispered, the anger is the seed. The part of you that's burning is churning your spirit to a weed. I can't stay stuck in a raised garden. I can't linger with the ash. I can't keep holding back the bloom. I gotta forget, and fast. The happiest I ever saw my grandmother was when her brain erased everything that made her cold. I want to be that soft and loving before I grow old. Don't you want to be easy? Don't you want to flow? Don't you want to love your life again and master letting go? The only way we do that is to tell the anger tree, no, no, no. You've kept me in your shelter, made me feel like I was safe, but the cost was getting smaller, forgetting to give more than I take. I'm ripping up your tree trunks. I'm gonna drag you through the river. This unbaptized daughter of an undefeated boxer will be crowned champion forgiver. You see, once that tree is holy and the ancestors empty it of its rage, blessed by the goddess of our people, I will transform it into a stage. I'm gonna use each strip of bark, build it back with my bare hands. Every time I get a splinter, I'll forgive another man. I'll forgive them all for the women in my bloodline. Forgive the women too, for how much they died trying. Once that foundation is solid, I'll climb upon it with my bare feet. I'll feel the cleansed earth beneath me, forgetting will make us complete. The stage will cover the sky. You'll have to get higher in order to see it. Once you do, it'll be for you too. We'll all know how to retrieve it. I'll invite anyone who ever held me, everyone I ever laughed with until I cried. I'll invite each and every one of you. And together we're gonna live and forgive before we die. We'll remember the way home was always bathed in moonlight. And by facing and embracing them shadows, that's how we claw our way out of that dark night. But now I'm swimming through the river, past the forest where it all began. I got that tree trunk on my back. I am holding my own hand. The stage will be built in an instant once we remember our true way. And love will be the Tucayas who shine to remind us we're here to play. We will become everything and nothing. We'll get back in our bodies again. By forgetting everything that broke us, we'll become our own best friends. We will blossom and unfold. No more frostbitten buds and sorrow. Come with me now. Bring your crowns and let's forget it all before tomorrow. In all that forgetting,